Welcome to In Confidence, where what we share in confidence helps us grow in confidence. Today's episode is with my dear friend Schele Williams. We've been friends for over 11 years. Schele is a renowned Broadway director. Most recently, she had 2 shows on last year, The Wiz and The Notebook, and she has so many more coming. In this conversation, we discuss our friendship, her journey from performer to director, her thoughts on leadership, setback, disappointment, inclusion, accessibility, and we discuss the future of Broadway. Listen in on this very special episode of In Confidence. Schele, welcome to In Confidence.
I'm so happy to be here.
So we just did the math. We've been friends for over a decade.
Yes, we have.
Like, shout out to Kathleen Murphy, our dear friend who passed Diana. We have been friends for over a decade.
Yes, we have.
This is the ups and downs.
Our lives have changed so much, and we're still good girlfriends, encouraging each other. It's the best.
Happy about that.
Me too.
Okay, so before we jump into it, can you share with everyone who you are?
Yes, I am Schele Williams. I am a theater director. I am an author. I am a friend. I am a mother. I am a daughter.
I love that description. It's like your Instagram bio in real life, IRL. And I've known you in a couple of contexts. We are friends first, but also we were both involved very actively at one point with Broadway Inspirational Voices, the incredible nonprofit.
Yes.
So lots of intersection points in our lives.
Yes, indeed.
All right, can we go back? Because I want folks to understand, you started your career as a performer, and now you're a Broadway director. Can you take us back to your days as a performer and what you were in, what that was like, and then we're going to talk about your transition to becoming a director.
Oh my gosh, the year was 1990. I moved to New York, and I went to the American Musical and Dramatic Academy. And when I graduated, I was very fortunate to do some European tours and regional theater. And my first Broadway show was Rent, and that was life-changing. I did the first national tour, and then I came on board to become the production dance supervisor and made my Broadway debut in that show. And then I really missed being on stage, and I was very fortunate to be cast in the original cast of Aida as Nehebka. And 2 days ago, we just had our 25th anniversary of Aida, which is bananas. And I am slated to direct the revival of Aida.
Okay, first of all, I need to geek out for a moment. What years were you in Rent?
Oh, goodness gracious. I don't even remember what year Rent opened. Was it like 94, 95?
I think so.
I think I was in it in 96. I was in it the year after it opened on Broadway.
Okay, because spring break, I was in college. I started college in 1996. Spring break, so it would have been the spring of 97. We all got train tickets and did that standing room back for Rent. And it was my first time seeing Rent, and it was life-changing. So I was just trying to figure out if you were in that.
I could have been. I would swing in and out of the show and travel to see the productions. So I was in and out of the show all the time. It was catch as catch can with me in the show.
And what was that life like as a performer?
Rent was so incredibly special because it was art that met the moment. I moved to New York, as a bright-eyed, 19-year-old in the theater business. So many of my teachers, mentors, friends' lives were shifting quickly. The AIDS epidemic hit so hard, the theater community specifically. I remember being on tour doing Porgy and Bess and watching our Porgy literally just get smaller and smaller, and he passed away on the road. I remember losing a dance teacher. I remember doing a chorus line, and 2 members of the cast had AIDS, and I went to go drink a soda after one of the cast members. He's like, no, you can't drink after me. And I was like, why? And he said, well, they say, you can't pass it this way. I'm HIV positive, but I just want to make sure. And it was so hard to be so young and lose your friends and mentors. We were not equipped for that. And to be in a country that wouldn't even talk about it, it was so, when I think about it now, it feels like, I've lived through 2 pandemics in my life, right? And I remember seeing Rent. When Rent opened on Broadway, I was the merch girl. I sold T-shirts and hats.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So when the show started, before it started previews, I got a call from a friend who was like, hey, they're looking for someone to sell merchandise at this new Broadway show, Rent. And I was like, oh, my friend Yasmin just got the show. Yeah, I want to do it. And I was like coat checking at a restaurant in Midtown. I was like, yeah, sure. So I was literally there from the very first preview and watched. I remember sitting, and the first time I ever heard Will I literally started bawling. And I remember thinking, like, these are my friends. They're talking about young people going through this epidemic and how they are choosing to live their life, no day but today. How, who was their chosen family? How are they loving the people who authentically see and love them? That show, it spoke to every fiber of my being. It will always be my favorite for that reason. And I was so fortunate because then when they started auditioning for the national tour, like, no one knew the show better than me. I was watching it every night. I could sing all this, like, it was like in my bones. And I was so fortunate that I was able to book that, and that show became such a big part of my life. And that's where I met Michael Greif. And then this last year, Michael and I co-directed The Notebook together. Oh. So, as you will learn, as you know, when I pick up people that I love in my life, I keep them, and I keep them close. So
yes. But one of the things that you just said, and I think it's a really important lesson, is I always say nobody's lucky. They just seize opportunities.
Yeah.
And I love that you were like, I will absolutely sell merch because it means that I will be there when the opportunity arises.
Yeah.
And you didn't look down on the opportunity. You're like, I will do anything to be in the arena. And I think that's such an important life lesson, right?
Yeah.
You got to be in the arena.
I had a professor that said, whatever you can do, be in and around theater. And so I had been, an usher at the Promenade Theater, and I saw George C. Scott perform. I mean, anytime it was anything with theater, I'm like, I'm working at a restaurant, or I could be inside an actual Broadway theater. Yes, please.
Did you make minimum wage at least?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember.
You don't even remember.
I don't even remember. I mean, they could have paid me in T-shirts. Like, I was so happy to be there. And little did I know at that time how seismic that show was going to be. I just know that it spoke to me in the way that only art can. And it fed my soul. And it said the unspoken feelings of young people who were really suffering without tools to cope with the impact of AIDS.
And that was actually one of my questions for you, is what made you fall in love with the arts? Is it that deep sense of emotional connection?
I think it was just a place to put all my energy. Like, I don't know that it was, I fell in love with the arts when I was like 5. I was like the kid who just loved to sing and dance and play. And so it was always a part of me. I loved I was such a ham sandwich, like they would say, Schele, get up and do so. I was like, okay. Like, I've always been that kind of a person. And so it felt very natural to me to be a part of the arts. I was a drummer for a long time, so I thought I was going to be like on another side of the stage. But when I got really bitten by the bug was my senior year, and I was like, nah, I really want to be on stage.
Okay, 5-year-old Schele would be geeking out about your life right now.
Totally.
She would be like, OMG, did not even know that was the career that I could have.
Totally. But 5-year-old Schele was probably like, oh yeah, of course. Like, I was such a cocky little thing. When you're young, you just believe everything. Like, I feel like I finally caught up to 5-year-old Schele, because there were all those years where I was not that. I was questioning everything, and I had doubt, and I kind of blindly went into things with hope. But 5-year-old Schele was like, of course it's going to happen.
That's why we're friends, because that's actually my fundamental tenet of my whole book, which is we're born fully self-confident.
Yeah.
And if only we could stop giving advice to our younger selves and take direction. I'm telling you, 9-year-old Lisa was going to be Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and President of the United States. I could still be one of them.
Yeah.
So you're right. 5-year-old Schele and 9-year-old Lisa would be besties.
Totally.
I feel that for us.
Yes.
I feel that for us. Now, what was the moment or experience that led you to transition from performer to director?
I was doing Aida, and Aida is a story that was so, of all the characters that I had played in all the shows I had been in, this one resonated with me in such a different way. Aida is a Nubian princess. The show had, there was an enslaved population. The Nubians were enslaved. It kind of hit on a lot of things that we didn't really talk about in school very much. Mm-hmm. And also in process of making the art, we didn't talk about it very much. And I wanted to go deeper inside the story. I wanted to look at a Black woman behind the table and have a conversation about playing Aida. I wanted to really explore the Blackness inside this piece, especially as a woman. And there was not a Black woman to have that with. There was not a Black person to have that with. And I decided that I never wanted to be in an experience like that again. So I decided to be the person behind the table so that no other Black woman could ever say, I never had a Black woman director.
Thank you for sharing that. I never knew that. We've been friends for over a decade, and I never knew that that's why you wanted to become a director.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. And what was that first director's gig that you got? What was the first directing gig that you got?
I directed a workshop of a show called Peace. I think that was the very first thing. But ironically, Aida was the first actual production that I directed at the Algonquin Playhouse. And when I did that production, I actually wrote to Tom Schumacher, who became my mentor shortly after that. But I wrote to Tom Schumacher and I said, there's some things I'd like to change in the book. And he was like, oh, would you now? And I was like, yes, there are. And so he said, well, why don't you make an appointment and we'll come in and have a meeting and you present me the changes you'd like to make. And I presented the changes that I wanted to make in the show. And he gave me permission to make all the changes.
What were some of the changes?
One of the biggest changes that was most important to me was that Rada Mays, in the original production, is complicit in her enslavement. And so the whole show becomes about how this enslaved woman falls in love with her enslaver and kind of romanticizes it. And I was like, no, we're not going to perpetuate these ideas of that. We're not going to do a Thomas Jefferson Salad Hemi. We're not going to, enough already, everybody. So it was really important to me that for their love to be plausible, he could not be complicit in her capture.
Wow. And is that what you're thinking about for?
Oh God,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. Like that to me is like, you can take dramatic license, but there's actually harm in perpetuating things that are that untrue that it actually creates a romantic, side of enslavement that just does not exist.
And what was Tom Schumacher's response to that? He
was like, yes, you can do it. I mean, he gave me permission to make all of those changes. And we got into what has been, an almost 30-year conversation. Like it really began our mentor-mentee, our friendship. It's been an incredible exploration, but it started with, if I could have had those conversations 25 years ago when we were doing the show, perhaps, right? Yeah. Perhaps it could have shaped the show that we even did, right?
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things that I want to happen when I'm making art. I want someone who sees the world differently than I do to be able to say, hey, can we talk about this moment? This feels, unauthentic to me in a way. I see the life from this perspective. Can we talk about this? That to me is what makes art great and goes beyond entertainment. It becomes transformative.
I love that. Now, I can imagine that there are the challenges of being a performer and the challenges of being a director.
Yeah.
Can you maybe kind of list off each?
The challenges of being a performer are, first you have to audition. You have to go in and bare your soul to an audience, an audience of, a director, a choreographer, a casting director, producers, and hope that you are what they're looking for in this character, right? It's like 5 minutes of your life, sometimes 10 minutes of your life, and you walk out, and it's going to be an up or down, a yes or no, or a maybe. We're going to see you again, and you do that hundreds of times in a year, right? Sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. You have a thick skin, right? You get rejected more than you get accepted, right? And then when you're inside the process of creating a role or replacing a role, you have to have the discipline to replicate that truth 8 times a week. And it is hard. Doing 8 shows a week is not for the faint of heart. You have to walk in there on the snowiest snowstorm. Like you have to look and go, oh my gosh, it's going to be, how am I getting in? How many hours is it going to be to commute? You get into the theater, you're constantly thinking about your health all the time, because you have to be in good health to perform.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people can go into work with like a little sniffle or a sore
No.
throat and still like sit at the computer. You actually have to be able to sing and dance your show. So your health is everything, right? And then you have to be at like your, 80 to 100%, because people have paid their hard-earned money to come see your gift, your offering. So there's really no, I'm just phoning it in today, I'm feeling a little under, I'm typing away at my computer. You are 100% on.
Respect.
And that happens when you have a bad day. It happens when you have a breakup. It happens when you find out someone you love has passed away or really sick. I mean, it is hard. It is hard work. And there's there's no certainty of the job. Like any given time, in 2 weeks' notice, you could be out of a job, right? It is the craziest thing that anyone would ever want to do, and I love it so much. But that is the life of the performer. The performer's life is ever changing, and it is unbelievably disciplined. A director's challenges are, you are going to get a show, you're going to work on it 6-7 years of your life. You have the privilege of picking your collaborators, and you are doing your best to grow this piece so that you make the best art you can in the time that you have, and that it has great impact on the people that have the privilege of performing it and on your audiences. And if you get it right, you are creating hundreds and hundreds of jobs. And if you get it wrong, you have really wasted so much money and time. It's like a $17 million mistake. It is horrifying. It's just like, it is so, and I was just teching a show a month ago, actually 2 weeks ago. And at the end of the day, like during the dinner break, I would go home to the hotel room and I just like shut down. And we were on the very last day, and we were all leaving, and we were leaving the next day. And I went out to dinner. The choreographer and I went out to dinner, and I was like, oh my gosh, this restaurant's great. I hadn't been to any restaurants in town. I was literally like door dashing like every day. And he's like, how in the world have you not like gone to eat? And I said, well, during the time that we're teching, from the time we get into the theater and we start a rehearsal, I'm looking at everything from the lighting to the costumes, listening to the sound cues. I'm looking at every earring, every wig, every bit of blocking, every line. I'm listening to the orchestra. I don't like that. Can we move that? Can we change this? Like my brain is multitasking in 15 different ways. That set piece is coming out a little late. Can we move that 3 seconds? That drop is like, my brain is just bisected to do all these things. And it's like a 10-day period of time. I've got to catch every single mistake that I can before an audience gets to see it. And it's exhausting. Oh. And it's amazing when it all comes together. When an audience appreciates all the work and the love and the passion that's been poured into it, it's the greatest feeling in the world.
No, first of all, yes, I have. Yes, I am so. It moves me to hear you talk about it, because I've never been inside it. I've just been on the audience side. So I love knowing there's this much passion and thought and energy put into it from the performers and the leadership. What skills as a performer or mindsets or whatever translated to directing? You're sort of like, I'm a better director because I was a performer because of these things. Yeah. And what things didn't translate? What were things that you're like, as a performer, I didn't even know I needed this set of skills?
The former is easier to answer. I'm definitely a better director because I was a performer. I love actors. And I think about their process the entire time. And I think of them as real collaborators in the process and not just tools for me to move around on a chessboard. And I have been both. I've been with directors who were like, and now you move here, and now you do this. And you really do feel like you're an instrument for them to play with inside a dollhouse. And then I've had directors who were really interested in what I was seeing inside the piece.
Well, that goes back to your Aida story, right? Of I wish I could have had a conversation with myself or someone like me to make the work better.
And those, knowing, when I direct a scene, I always ask the actors, How is that for you? And it's to give them agency to know that it matters to me that they understand and feel confident and safe and empowered as a collaborator inside this. I'm going to win. I'm the director, right? So if there's something that's like, it's not working, it's not working. It's not a democracy, right? But it is important that I acknowledge that they are inside this piece in a way that I never will be. I'm looking at it from the outside and they're looking at it from the inside.
And is there something from your recent body of work, like the Notebook, The Wiz, anything where you would say, I can point to a moment where I asked, how was that for you? And the answer made the work better?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, Marion Plunkett is a genius, the most incredible woman to work with and learn from. And when we were doing the Notebook, there was a moment in the show and she said, this doesn't feel right for me. Can we explore this in a different way? And when you have an actor that you love and trust, the answer is always yes, right? It was an emphatic yes when there's an actor you love and trust. To me, the answer is always yes, because we're either going to learn that like this is a great idea or that was terrible, right? There's what's another 5 minutes of your life. So I'm always open to explore. But what she brought to that piece, because she felt safe and because she cared so much and because she was inside it in a way that we could never be on the outside, made that piece so unbelievably special.
I love that. Well, and what didn't translate? What were skills that you had to, whether be taught or learn along the way to become a great director?
There's just a lot of, what doesn't translate is the kind of collaboration with designers. When you start out as a young director and you're like in regional theater, you're thinking, you get to kind of do everything. You're like, oh, and then I want the set to look like this, and it's going to be this, and the lighting, and I want this, and this is, you're kind of dictating everything. When you actually like get to the big time, those designers are really good. Like you're not telling them what a set should look like, right? You're like, if I can tell you what the set should look like, I've got the wrong designer. You're working with people. Your job is to articulate a vision. And then they meet that vision with their genius. And that is like, I never imagined that was what the set was going to look like. And that actually exceeds my imagination of it.
That presumes, though, that you don't let your ego get in the way.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like that, that takes a lot of confidence and security in your own role.
Yeah, best idea's got to win. And I have to believe that when I'm hiring designers and I'm choosing them to be a part of the team, that we all want the same thing, that we all share a true north.
Well, and so, I grew up in corporate America. And so you go away for professional development. You have your week of training. You have like established mentorship protocols. There's like a way in which you build a leader. I imagine in your industry, it looks very different. Like how did you get shaped? Was it mentors? Was it experience? Like what's the pathway to getting to build those leadership skills?
It's a little bit of everything, right? It's people that you've worked with before. I did a lot of assisting as an actor. The things that I loved and things that I didn't love, and so you kind of just put it all in the soup, and then you find your own voice. And that, to me, when I realized this is the way I want to run a room, is when I felt like, okay, now I know who I am as a director. I don't feel like I'm playing at it anymore. I mean, I was a good actress, so I could like act the part for a while. But then when I really became a director is when I don't even know what project that was, but I remember thinking, oh, I'm fully running the room now. I know what it is that I like. I know what I don't like. I know what I want. I know what I don't want in process, in tech, even in terms of the way I always start a tech process and say, I don't yell, which means no one yells. Because I'm the captain of the ship.
I love that.
And so I always say, you cannot be out of control and in control at the same time. My job is to be in control. There is not a problem that we can't solve. We are creative people. We will create solutions.
I love that.
So you meet me where I am, and this is the tone. Doesn't mean that I don't get upset. And I get frustrated and I get upset, but what I'm not going to do is disrespect you in my, I can manage my fury.
Yeah, you set the tone, because we always say this on our team, everything is solvable. Everything is solvable. So I love that that's your approach.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go back to something you said earlier, which is as a performer, setback, disappointment, rejection. I imagine in transitioning to the role of director, insecurity or doubts or any of that. What are your tools to manage setback, disappointment, fear, insecurity, rejection, all of the things that I imagine were part of your rise?
It's so interesting. It's easy. I think it was a little easier when I was a performer, because I'd just be like, there's 10 more auditions tomorrow. Like, it's a little harder as a director because there's not a ton of opportunities that are coming your way. So at some point I was like taking everything because I was just like so thirsty. I was like, I just need my name on everything. And then there comes a point where your time matters. I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids. I have a husband. I have a life outside the theater. So every time I'm doing a project, I'm not doing something else. And so then I had to get very choosy about what it is that I wanted and figuring out what projects really mattered to me. And sometimes projects are like, they matter because I think this one's going to make money, right? Like sometimes it's not all like noble, right? I still have to love it. The thing that I have learned is no matter how great the project is, the people have to be the motivating factor. I will only work with teams of people that I love and trust and respect. It's not worth the money to do otherwise.
Well, and it's time away from your family, so I might as well enjoy these people.
Yeah, and it's a lot of time and a lot of years.
Yeah, but what I love that you said is everything about your story up to this point is there's an abundant and opportunity mindset. There's an abundance and an opportunity. Like, I'll be the merch girl. There's 10 more auditions tomorrow. And I love now it's like a priority mindset. It's like, what am I excited about? Where do I want to spend my energy? And that's a really interesting shift that maybe at the beginning of your career, you have to have an abundance mindset. And then you get to a point where you've earned the right to be in a priority mindset.
Yeah, I got a really incredible advice a couple years ago. Taraji P. Henson is the most incredible human and a friend. And she said to me, I was feeling particularly down about something. And she said, Schele, there's never a job that anyone else has gotten that belonged to me.
Ooh.
And I have never had a job that it belonged to somebody else. She said, when you think about your life and your career, when somebody else gets something, you celebrate them. That was for them. That was their job. That was their opportunity. That wasn't something they took from you. That was something they were meant to have. And I tell you what, that hit me to my core. It literally keeps me from being jealous. When I see someone else get something, I'm like, good for them. That is for them. That is good for them.
Okay, but full circle moment. Now we get to do a full circle moment, which is we did this amazing collaboration with Erin Gallagher at Hype Women, talking about Hype Women, which I'm wearing the blouse today. And you gave us a quote that you hand wrote for the blouse. Can you tell us what the quote was?
Yes. Your peers are not your competition. They're your inspiration.
Okay, tell us the backstory of this quote because it links directly to what you just said.
Yeah. Last year, I received an incredible directing award from the Drama League. And last year, I had 2 shows on Broadway, which was incredible. And during the whole award season, it's an incredibly competitive time to have shows on Broadway and who's going to get nominated, who's not going to get nominated. And it's heartbreaking and it's tough and every show you start to look at, you start to think like, are they your competition? Are they going to get nominated? Am I not going to get, like all of these things start churning in you that were never a part of who I am, right? And I remember beginning to look at shows and thinking, like reading reviews, and a part of me was like, I hope these reviews are terrible. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, I actually am a person who wants every show to be great. It's only great for our industry. What is happening to me? And I was getting this award, and I had to write a speech. And it was really tough because I didn't get nominated. And I was like, oh my God, okay, now, like, were they planning to honor me because I thought I was going to get nominated and then I didn't get nominated? And it was like, I kind of went through this whole mind thing about it. And then I sat down and I thought about why I was getting the award. Like, why me, right? And then I thought about the journey. I thought about and I even talked to them. I was like, hey, I want to just know, like, why did you choose me for this award? And they told me, and they talked to me about the impact that I'd had on the industry and the body of work and the things that were important to me. And it really kind of hit me. Like I saw myself through their eyes, right? And so as I started to write this speech, I thought about all the people that were up on the dais that were going to be up there behind me. And I was thinking about how proud I was of them. How incredible to be in this season with them, to celebrate them. And I thought, these are my peers. They've been slugging along with the same hopes and dreams as these are my peers. Mm-hmm. And I'm inspired by their work. And I have to remain inspired. I have to be rooting for them because we all win together. And when they come see my show, I want them rooting for me. I don't want them hoping my show is terrible, right? I want them, like, that's where we need to be. Our peers are truly our inspiration.
I love that. That is, I think, a mindset that we all should have, right? Because, we're all in business and it's like competitive advantage and like, what are they doing that we're not doing and whatnot. And it's very much a zero-sum mentality. Yeah. And in your industry in particular, I love that it's a win-win, right? It's like if we all succeed, then we get more financing, then we get more people excited about this. We have more things to go on tour. We have, we get to sell
if somebody loves a Broadway show, guess what they want to do next? See another Broadway show.
Exactly.
So like, I want your show to be great because I want them to come to my show. Like that's the kind of mindset I feel like, I don't know, not everybody has that, and it kind of breaks my heart. But if they love the theater, they do.
Then there's the flip side, because I imagine so much of a Broadway show's success is defined by its reviews. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we talk a lot about is when you tie yourself to external validation, it drives deep unhappiness.
Yeah.
Because if you get it, you're not satisfied. You're like, I'm going to win it again.
Right.
And if you don't get it, you beat yourself up.
Yeah.
How do you handle that complicated relationship with reviews?
Oh, it's awful.
Okay.
It's terrible. And then there's certain things that there's certain realities, right? There's certain realities where if not everybody's going to understand your mind, get what you're going for, like your taste, like your style, and everybody's going to like your haircut or your shoes or your glasses so there's a part of me that is, this is one person's impression. And reviewers, for the most part, are a subsect of people that are very similar, right? And so there might be a group of people who are like, I don't get it, I don't like it, I don't want to, right? And then you sit in an audience, and then you've got 1,800 people who have a different mindset, right? And so it's about the balance. Who are you making it for? What is the impact? Are you proud of, my mom would always say to me, you have to be proud of what you put your name on. You just don't put your name on anything. You have to think about that. Your name follows you for the rest of your life. And so, if I feel like I'm proud that I put my name on that, I'm good. And there's times where I put my name, you're never done when you're a director, right? You're always like, oh, if I had 2 more days, right? Yeah. And it's not like a movie where you're like, we're just going to push no, you're going to have an audience on this day. And there's no way. There's times where I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much more I wanted to do. But at the end of the day, I've always felt proud of everything I've put my name on.
I love that, and you reviewed my book. So thank you for reviewing my book. 6 months before the book came out, my literary agent, Andy, who's amazing, called me and she said, first of all, we're not going to talk about the bestsellers list. You did not write this book to get on a list. And I'm like, but I really want this list. I want this list. I want to be bestseller here. She goes, no. You wrote this book because you had a certain set of business objectives. Mm-hmm. You wrote it to change people's lives. And she said, you've already changed my life. So 1 life down, and that's enough.
Yeah.
And whatever happens 6 months from now, I know you're going to work super hard on the publicity. You're going to activate everything. You're going to do everything you can. You've done your best work.
Yeah.
And so on September 13th, when that thing goes live, it's done. We can't touch it anymore. And I promise you, you're going to have a ripple effect in people's lives.
Yeah.
And she said, for 6 months, we're not going to talk about awards. We're not going to talk about lists, awards, anything.
Yeah.
Because it's all just upside down. You've already changed my life. And I was like,
Beautiful.
that's the best thing she could say to me. And we did hit a couple lists. And when she called me, and I said, you know what? It's okay. I'm glad we did, because that means more people will buy it and it'll change more people's lives. But we did our best work. So I love that. The reviews are going to be what they're going to be.
Yeah.
And it'll have an impact on your show or won't.
Yeah.
But you did your best work.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I know you also do a lot of work in corporate America. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about what some of that work is that you do?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a little while, but I had the great privilege of working with Kenji Yoshino and the Metzler Center, doing diversity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives inside all kinds of Fortune 500 companies. And it was incredible.
And what were some of the lessons that you would teach folks?
A lot of the things that we talked about, gender inequality, how to have an expansive mindset, things about how have we been looking at things for so many years inside corporations, and are we really thinking about, how that accommodates mothers and women inside corporate America, and the impact of having you being told that you're too shrill or you have sharp elbows, or just like the impact of the stringent kind of leadership, the narrow mono kind of leadership that's happened for so long. How are we creating room for different kinds of leaders and different kinds of styles of leadership?
And what I love that you shared earlier is, even a small change in the story can shift someone's perspective, right?
Oh, for sure.
When I think about what you did with Aida and saying, if we just shift this one thing, we're no longer putting out a message about a relationship, and we want to write this.
Yeah.
And I love that you're able to do that in corporate America.
I mean, one of the things that I remember learning a lot about introverted people, and from someone who comes from a performance background around a lot of very extroverted actors, I kind of didn't get shy people. Like, I was like, I don't get them. Like, just speak up. Like, that was kind of, my sister was shy growing up, and I was like, oh gosh, when you just say what you want. And I did not know until I started working with Kenji how many people in corporate America, how many actors really need downtime. Yeah. Really, are not the people who are going to raise their hand first, and because of that get ignored, get passed over. How are we creating space where we can acknowledge that the way that you navigate inside the workplace is different, and that's okay? It does not affect your work product. You might need downtime. You might need to email an idea versus speaking out in a room full of people. That might not be your jam, right? So even thinking about how to create a space where everyone has the opportunity to soar has changed me as a director. Like, doing that work had a huge impact on my
I love it. As a fellow extrovert, I work well with introverts now because I see their value. You'll talk like for 10 minutes about something, and they'll like actually go shape it into the perfect proposal 2 days later, because they've actually done all the hard thinking on their own.
Yeah.
And have to take that forward. The flip side, though, of that one, which I always say, I love creating spaces for different working styles, but the reality is we do work in an extroverted world. What are your tips for someone who has stage fright or has to give a presentation? Because I'm always curious what former performers would say. Here's the 3 things that I would say everyone needs to do, or what do you do to help someone overcome stage fright?
I tell them to be confident in what they have to say. When I was younger, I had this horrible thing where I was a very, very, very good drummer. My dad's a drummer. I had the gift. It was just like, it was in me. My daughter has it. It's just in her.
I want to come to a drum set at your house, Schele.
Gosh, it's pretty incredible. And I did not practice for this one particular competition because I was a little cocky. I was a lot cocky. And I was like, I got it. I'm not doing it. I'm doing it. It was a big contest. And on this particular one, it was a xylophone contest. And I hadn't practiced. And I got in there and I forgot my solo. And my private teacher was accompanying me on the piano, and she started playing the melody, and I picked it up halfway through, and I came out of the room and I started crying. And it was interesting because before I went into the room, I was like, I was shaking, like my legs were. My dad's like, "You're really nervous," and I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'm gonna just, you know." And I was, I came out of the room bawling. The dad's like, "Why are you crying?" And I was like, "I forgot my solo." And he's like, "Why are you crying?" I'm like, "I forgot my solo. Didn't you hear me? I forgot my solo." He's like, "Why are you crying?" And I was like, "What are you saying?" And he said, "You're crying because you weren't prepared. And that's why you were scared." And he said, "You're never scared when you're prepared." And I literally thought, I am never, ever going to be scared again in my life. And that, when I was an understudy, I would be so over-prepared to go on. I would do the show in my living room. I'd move my furniture around. Like that anytime anybody was like, "Schele, you're going on for Aida," I'm like, "Okay." First time I went on, I was so laid back. "Do you need to go over everything?" "I'm good." I was so ready. And I got to enjoy it. I was like, I am never going to be scared again. So whenever anybody says to me, "I really feel nervous," I'm like, you be confident in what you have to say. Do you know what you're saying? You know what you're talking about? And just go up there and talk to me. Just tell me what you know. Be confident in what you know.
But I love that idea because it's like that TV show, The Rehearsal, right? It's sort of unconscious competence. Like if you've rehearsed it enough, you almost can do it in your sleep.
Absolutely.
And I do a lot of keynotes and I'm like, I've said it so many times. Everyone's like, "Are you scared?" I'm like, I got my breathing techniques and all of that, but I've said it so many times, even if I zone out, I know the words that are coming.
Yeah.
The other thing we were talking about is our chief of staff, Claire, was a former performer. And if she has to dance in front of an audience, she's totally fine. But then when put in the context of I have to give a presentation in a business context, she might get more anxious. Do you think those skills translate? Like, one part of your life, I'm awesome at it. How do you help people translate it into another part of their life?
I don't know, actually. I don't know. For me, I just think of it as like I think of every part of my life as storytelling. So, whether I'm writing a book, whether I'm directing, whether I was acting, whether I'm singing, whether I'm, at every ounce of my being is telling a story. So if I have to get up, I'm just telling a story. And so that's the way I navigate everything.
Yeah. Mindy Grossman, who's been the CEO of so many companies, she said to me once, "It's hard to be two people. Just be one person across every aspect of your life."
Yeah.
Which I love.
And find the moniker that works for that.
Yeah, and rehearse. I do. Everybody who I've ever coached on how to present in a business setting, I'm like, you got to do it like 5 times before we even get to the meeting. I'll rehearse with you so you have an audience. I'll give you tips, but you have to keep saying it over and over. I think so many people go into presentations cold. Like they've done all the analysis, they've done the PowerPoint, and then when it comes to actually saying the words out loud, they freeze. And I'm like, did you practice? So I love that that's your advice.
Oh my God, like 5 times? I'm like 55 times. Like I say it so many times.
Okay.
I say it in the shower. Literally, when I'm on the train, I'm just like reading it over and over and over on my phone. I know it inside and out. But I grew up a dancer and a musician. I only know repetition.
Okay, did you hear that, Claire? So this is why we practice before our meetings. I do practice with Claire. Good job. We're doing it. Okay, we're going to close out with a few other questions about the future. When you're working on a Broadway show, do you ever know how it's going to do?
No.
Okay, so it's just do your best work.
Do your best work.
What about the future?
It's like baking a souffle, right? You're just like, hope it's good. Please don't fall. You put a lot of work into it, so you really do hope that you have thought it through. But what you don't know, which is so interesting, like coming out of the pandemic, the things that we craved as a culture were so different than the things that we craved before.
Like what?
Joy. It's really hard to sit through a super dark piece.
Interesting. I didn't even notice that. You're right.
Everybody was like, "Oh my God, Ted Lasso." It was like, yeah, what did Ted Lasso and Schitt's Creek have in common? People just wanted to laugh.
Yeah.
Nobody gets hurt. Everyone's to laugh. Everyone's to
That's
feel
why I
good.
love The Notebook.
Uplifting. Like, they're just like, there's just parts of you that we're just craving different things as humans.
I love that. And that's why the Notebook met the moment. Like literally,
Yeah.
I just wanted to see them fall in love all over again.
Yeah. And know what it means to live a life well lived and worth fighting for.
Yes.
Right?
There was a New York Times piece that came out recently about the future of Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
And it talked about celebrities doing small runs or everything has to be a hit and run for years, and theater spaces, there's a scarcity of it. And so anything we put in there has to be perfect, or funding sources have changed. There's no longer these patrons that are like, great, we created great art. It didn't do well, but I'm still proud of it. Structurally, where is that industry going over the next couple of years?
Broadway's not going anywhere. Okay. Broadway's going to have to go through its own version of evaluation and structural shift, like every industry, right? Now we're making electric cars, right? Like there's a world in which like we're going to have to find our balance. In the pendulum swing, you go too far one way and you've got to shift back the other. It happens every 20, 25 years. When I moved to New York, every show was big, 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 big. There was a helicopter on stage. Like all the Cameron shows were like bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And then shows got very intimate and small, and they were chamber pieces. And so we're finding our way again. Everything that they mentioned is absolutely true.
Okay.
The core value of what we do, the art that we make, the impact we have, the need for humans to come together and share an experience has not waned.
Okay.
We have to create sustainable art.
What does sustainable art mean?
It means art that is accessible, art that speaks to the moment, art that makes us think and laugh and breathe together, art that sustains our humanity and gives us hope.
You mentioned accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean, accessibility? Because that New York Times piece talked about skyrocketing ticket prices, people not being able to get to see the shows they want. How do you solve that?
It's gotten bananas, right? It's, it is, God, that's such a good question. How do you solve it? You solve it just by creating space. There really does have to be the brave people who say, guess what? There can be a $1,500 ticket, and there can also be a $50 ticket. And the margin that we're making on that $1,500 ticket gives us the ability to have a $50 ticket. That every ticket doesn't have to be $1,500 because we can. Because what's important is that we are still creating space for new generations to love and appreciate the art. We're not making it so exclusive that only the few chosen ones get to enjoy something that should be transformative for all of us.
Well, that's why I love the lottery program, right?
Yeah.
I saw 6 via the lottery. I've seen so many things via the lottery, because if you lower the prices too much, then the scalpers win, right? They snap those up, and then the resale market wins, and the production doesn't. I also will say I love it when Hamilton was on Disney Plus, because I had so many friends who couldn't afford to go, or couldn't get a ticket, that during the pandemic they're like, I'm going to watch Hamilton. Didn't even know what all the buzz was about. And so I also think digital formats are really exciting now, because I know it doesn't replace live, but if you can't see something because it's too expensive or you can't get a ticket, there are other ways, which I thought was interesting with streaming.
And what's really interesting is that, there's a lot of people who watch a Beyonce video for free in their homes, but still go fork over $1,000 to go see that tour, right? So it doesn't necessarily cut into the income of people wanting to see it live. There's nothing like seeing it live. But I just think that you have to be courageous enough to create that space.
Well, and also touring. So when you told me that the Notebook is going on tour,
Yeah.
I did not get to see it in its first Broadway run. And now that I know it's on tour, I travel a lot. So I'm going to see if it's playing wherever I'm going. It could be
Yeah.
Denver. It could, there's lots of different towns where it might be playing and I can go see it there.
Absolutely. It's going to be all over the country. And it's also another beautiful thing about shows touring is that they go into towns where people live. You don't have to come to New York. You know, a beautiful show is coming right to your town, and your town gets to get the money for that dinner night out. You know, the local restaurants. I love having tours on the road.
Well, and I remember texting you once. You're like, I'm doing tech for Motown as it goes on tour, and I'm like, I always forget things go on tour.
Oh yeah, that's how I saw shows growing up in Dayton, Ohio. Yeah.
Schele, you made waves with your casting in The Notebook, in that younger Allie and older Allie were two different races. Mm-hmm. And I think you wrote a piece where you talked about the rules of theater are different, that there's this suspension of disbelief that happens in the theater where you can, for that moment, believe in an idea and a character and be comfortable with that shift in casting. Like, can you, first of all, just explain to folks what you did, because I'm doing a poor job of doing that. And then what that might mean for people in everyday life.
So the big rules of theater are yes and, right? And it's a big thing that an audience doesn't even know they're saying yes and to the moment that they sit down in the audience. We sit down in the audience and the lights go out and we go, yes, where are we? And then the soundscape comes up and you hear crickets and the lights come up and you go, oh, we're outside in a field, and the character comes on stage, right? That's a suspension of belief, because every part of you knows you're sitting in New York City in a chair, not in a field, and there really aren't crickets, right? So because you say yes and from the moment someone sits in a chair and they put their arms up and they make the driving motion, and you're like, oh, they're in a car, right? We do all kinds of playing pretend on stage, and the audience goes with us. We go through a door, and we're like, oh, you're in another room, right? We believe in everything that the actors are proposing to us is the truth, right? It's the same thing with in The Notebook as Allie, is that we wanted our audiences to see themselves inside this piece. We wanted to expand. You are Allie. You are Noah. You are that 16-year-old. You know that your mom is Allie. Your dad is Noah, right? No matter who you are, you can look on that theater and see the expansiveness of humanity and the way that this incredible disease is so pervasive and really affects so many of us all over the world. It is not limited to one perspective. And so we can feel that too. Yeah. We get to be included in the story.
Okay, and I love that, because I love the idea of yes and being that rule that I think we can carry into our everyday life. We can say yes and in this moment, I can imagine a different way to do that.
Right,
I can imagine a totally different way that this could play out, and let's go down that path.
Exactly.
Love that.
Exactly.
So there's a term my friend Deepa Purushottam created called the first, the few, and the only, FFO. What does it mean to be the first Black female director on Broadway in 40 years?
It's loaded. It is an incredible honor, and it's incredibly frustrating that it took so long. You know, there are incredibly talented Black women who should have done this before me. And that I should have been able to learn from and grow from. When I met Debbie Allen, she came to see The Wiz, and she's directed Broadway plays, you know, but not a musical. And this is a woman who is probably one of the most musical, you know, human beings, still dancing, you know, still like, how in the world has she not directed like 15 musicals, right? How in the world did I not get to assist and learn from her on stage? She's conquered so many entertainment mediums. So I'm very happy that the door is open. I'm very excited that Whitney White is directing a musical this season. I'm excited for all the other Black women that will follow me and the additional musicals that I have coming up in the future. It's not going to be another 40 years before it happens again.
And how do you ensure that you're not the only or the few?
By saying out loud, it is important that our voice is heard, that our perspective is a part of the narrative.
I love that.
Yeah.
You're also the author of a book.
Yes.
Your legacy, which
soon to be, I've got 2 books and I've got a 3rd coming out soon.
Okay. But I remember we had dinner. Mm-hmm. We had dinner and we were eating, I was telling you the story, spicy wontons.
Yes,
we were sitting in the garment district or a theater district.
Yeah.
And you showed me the PDF on your phone of the book. And I got to read it months before it came out.
Yeah.
What was your motivation for writing it? Well, first of all, tell us what the book is about. The first one, that's the one that I know of, but I did not know that there was more coming.
Yeah.
And what motivated you to do it?
The first book is called Your Legacy, A Bold Reclaiming of Our Enslaved History. And I wrote the book for my daughters because I didn't know how to have a conversation with them about their enslaved history. When I grew up and I was taught about slavery in school, it was horrifying. It was like I was one of 2 Black people in the class. And there was, the history book, and there were Black people in chains, and that was the representation of my ancestors. And then I saw, movies in which, Black people were speaking like broken English and getting whipped, and it was just like terrifying. I mean, I saw Roots as a kid, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I just kind of wanted to disassociate myself from that because there was no context. And my kids are Jewish and Black, and every year we celebrate Passover. And so there's like a whole meal and ceremony around their Jewish enslaved heritage. And I began to feel really guilty. Like they were like 5 and 6 years old. And I was like, we've now been doing this since they were babies, celebrating Passover, and I have not had a conversation with them about their enslaved history as a Black woman. So I would go look for a book. I was calling my friends and I was like, what did you say? And they're like, oh girl, I haven't said anything. It was like we all were fully traumatized as kids. And so I was like, I need to figure out how to do this. I am not going to ignore this. And I couldn't find the book, so I wrote it.
I love that. You always write the book you most need yourself.
Yeah.
Or for your family in this case. Where are you going next? What's next for you?
Oh my gosh. I am really excited. I have another book coming out. I have another children's book coming out, which is a totally different kind of a subject matter, which I'm really kind of excited about. I am excited about the theater pieces that I'm going to bring into the world. I have a couple plays. I have a couple one-person shows of people that I deeply love and admire. I have a couple musicals that I'm very excited about. So there's some good storytelling coming down the pike and stories that I believe that are necessary and impactful and kind of check the boxes of all the things that make me happy.
I love that. So in closing, what's the best piece of advice you would give someone to have gravitas?
Remain incredibly curious. Always think of yourself as a student. And be proud every moment that you wake up. Not only that you are here, but you have impact and you have purpose.
Oh my gosh, Schele, I'm so happy we're friends. I am so happy we're friends. I have the coolest friends in my life. How lucky am I? Well, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to the next decade of our friendship. I hope you enjoyed this episode of In Confidence. I learned so many things from Schele. It's so interesting that you can be friends with someone for over a decade and still not know certain parts of their origin story. Like why she loves the arts and how deeply personal her first show, Rent, was, how to have an abundance mindset and seize opportunities, and how to always be prepared to meet the moment. If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe so you never miss a moment of inspiration. And until next time, in the words of my 9-year-old self, I see you, I value you, and I believe in you. This is In Confidence.